Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in for another show. There's too much to talk about. I mean, my goodness. The United States, with the help of the UK, going to take over a Russian oil tanker. I mean, what the hell are you thinking? That's number one. Two, now they're confirming the United States, it's almost done deal with Iran. Reports in Iran that Iran took down an Israeli drone, unverified so far, but everything is happening so quickly. And we have a response coming from a senior official in Russia who's saying now that the only solution is to sink some American boats and potentially use nuclear bombs. That's where the situation is. I mean, simply that. And that's no like dramatization of events or anything as such. That's what's been happening. And we're going to go into all of the details that happen, including ICE in the United States killing Americans for no reason whatsoever, and the American president defending these actions. Now, officials in certain states threatening with their own action against the federal government. This man is on a total rampage. Officials from Europe saying that we now need to divorce. We need to divorce the United States. I mean, thankfully, some people still have their heads together. Unlike the leaders in Britain or in Germany or in some other European countries. Totally blind and helping these piracy adventures of an imperial militaristic oligarchy led by an insane individual. Isn't your purpose to serve the people of your country? Why are you going on adventures with lunatic Trump who's killing Americans? It's bizarre. But before I go into all of the details, it is clear now that there's a pattern going on. And that pattern is, well, the United States is realizing that it's slowly losing influence. That sometimes can accelerate, whether it's influence, whether it's control, whether it's reputation. They tied their fate with a genocidal satanic entity, killing infants left, right, and center. Today, Israel killed people in the Tufah neighborhood in Gaza, still massacring infants to this day. They have bloodlust, probably to do with rituals or something. But this man is realizing that the United States isn't what the United States used to be previously. The empire is in decline, in decay, moral decline. Western establishments are in very advanced levels of moral decay, depravity, and decline, led by Donald Trump and anyone who associates himself with Donald Trump. If you don't associate yourself with him, if you have a level of criticism, if you have the audacity and bravery to say a word that is not perfectly aligned with Donald Trump, I spare you. But apart from those people who show an element of, objection, I'm sorry, you're in a moral decay, a moral decline, and total collapse, societal collapse, moral collapse, everything collapse. No wonder now you're resorting to piracy in the oceans to help Donald Trump. And he's trying to set precedents. What do I mean by that? He's trying to set precedents by kidnapping a president, by attacking different countries, by threatening different countries, by threatening allies, neighbors that he wants to control, whether it's to do with energy or precious metals or whatever it is. And he's seeing how far he can go. So he can kidnap Maduro. Okay. He can say, now we control the oil. All right. I mean, they've done that several times in West Asia, aka the Middle East. They did it. And there was hardly any real response, I mean, from global powers. But now he's stepping up the game. Now he's going to target the Russian bear, Matushka. Why, Trump? Why did you do that to Matushka, motherland Russia? Why? Do you want to lead us to World War III? Are you in a hurry? Are you in a rush? According to him, it's because they changed the flag, therefore it was a stateless oil vessel now. It carried a false flag, and they were a shadow Venezuelan oil tanker. You see, they go and kidnap a president. They start to say that we control the oil resources, and they start setting up a new reality. And the world needs to be accustomed to it. Therefore, they need to obey. But now with this attack against Russia, it's an escalation. I mean, an undeniable escalation. They're proudly releasing the images and videos, unclassified videos. They managed to do that just before the arrival of a Russian fleet that was headed towards that way, and a submarine, according to some reports. Cowardice. Again, they're not brave. These people are not brave. They act like cowboys and machos and what have you. They're pathetic. The moment they're going to be faced with resistance, they'll be pissing with their pants, like the Israeli army that they learned from. Because there's now a very, very high resemblance between the Israeli forces and the American forces. I mean, there was something traditionally there from a very long time ago, police brutality in the United States of America, primarily against minorities, but also against the general public, as I'm going to show you later on, with an ICE force member shooting a woman to kill her in the head because she was simply objecting and protesting against their presence in her area. That was forced upon the state by the federal government again. And by the way, that's showing that the United States now is more torn than ever. So don't be surprised if something's going to happen internally in the United States and some states will break apart. I mean, that's the only solution moving forward. Each state will have its independence. Enough. Because otherwise the federal government is coming for you. But anyway, they published this video acting and pretending to be like machos, as if anyone was armed there, you know, helicopters and going down against no one, really. There's nothing brave about that. Plus, you had no right to do that. In addition, you had no legal backing to do that. This goes against American law and it goes against international law. But again, they don't care. That's why they want to kind of act like these cowboys and create some sort of a resemblance or an interpretation to this false term, make America great again, as if it was ever great in its history. By having these piracy acts against Russia this time, that has 6,000 nuclear warheads. He's doing that against Russia directly. It's a direct attack against Russian sovereignty. Now, we found out later on that it wasn't purely an American act. I mean, what I'm going to say with this will also apply to the American people. However, Britain proudly confirmed that it participated in this act. The Ministry of Defense, the UK has provided enabling support to the United States at their request to interdict the vessel Bella 1 today. In case you're confused, they changed the name. UK armed forces provided pre-planned operational support, including basing to US military assets, interdicting the Bella 1 between the UK and Iceland following a US request for assistance. What, was the US not strong enough? I thought they were the strongest country in the world. Couldn't they do it on their own? Did they need the help of Britain? Anyway, RFA tied force providing support for US forces pursuing and interdicting the Bella 1, while RAF provided surveillance support from the air. They need a round of applause. Firstly, they begin with helping Israel with the genocide in Gaza and surveillance, and now the British armed forces are helping the United States in their piracy acts against a perfectly legal oil tanker going to Venezuela, another country that the United States recently invaded and kidnapped its president, with again support from the UK. International law, we'll set it aside, no problem. The UK and US defense and security relationship is the deepest in the world, and the UK provided enabling support to the operation in full compliance with the international law. I beg to differ. Do you have evidence that that was in accordance to international law, or is international law when you and your allies or your masters want to commit acts of terror and piracy in international waters? What is it exactly? What are they doing here? Well, firstly, they're not doing anything to defend their people, but the absolute opposite. They are increasing the risk against their people first and foremost. So this American-British terrorism in broad daylight and going against international law is putting Americans and Brits at risk, first and foremost. Why? Because they're attacking an oil tanker that belongs to Russia. That Russia can deem, you attacked our territory tomorrow. What's going to be the difference? Because now they're testing. What are they going to do now? Are they going to sit silent? We're going to talk about the response in a second. Or are they going to do something? You're increasing the risk of hostile actions coming as a response to your hostility that is severely miscalculated and very amateur, totally against international law, totally unjustified. There was no immediate threat against your people. You can argue that if a Russian fighter jet goes in your airspace or near your airspace, you'll launch like one or two fighter jets to kind of tell them, don't come next to our airspace and what have you. There's, of course, a bigger argument because there's a context here. They've been bullying Russia since the early 90s, expanding eastwards 24/7, constantly bringing new regimes in East Europe towards their side and installing missiles directed at Russia. But Russia's the threat. That's the argument that comes from the Western leaders. Anyway, what are you doing? And where are you putting your national security? Where is the security of your people? You're putting everyone at risk. What, can Britain handle nuclear bombs? Everyone will die. Unless you're maybe in John O'Groats or something, or Land's End. You know, the extreme north in Scotland or the extreme south next to, you know, the edge of Cornwall or something. If they decide to target every single place in the UK, everyone's gone. I mean, there's no point in trying to kind of look online, what can I do in case a nuclear bomb lands in the UK? There's no point. If they want to wipe off this island, they will. And with the help of Keir Starmer, the supposed alternative, right? Who now, well, he has already exposed himself to anyone with an ounce of brain from a very long time ago, clearly showing that he's following the path of his predecessors with this obedient to his American masters, who are totally and absolutely becoming more and more reckless by the minute. I mean, by the second, they're becoming more reckless. What do you have to do to put your name into this act? I mean, if you did, try and hide it. I mean, I don't know. No, they're bragging about it. Oh yeah, we helped. The UK helped the United States, and it was under international law. A tear is about to drop. International law. And I've been listening to Putin, I've been listening to Xi Jinping, I've been listening to Trump, to Starmer, to all of them the past several years, and from a while, really. And one thing that I've noticed is whenever I listen to, and I'm no supporter of anyone, really, in case you ask, in case you're wondering. I've never heard something like either obnoxious or irrational, unsubstantiated from Russian and Chinese leaders. And their speeches and their statements are incomparable to Western leaders. Amateurish, childish, bullyish, arrogant, unsubstantiated, pathological liars. Putin made a statement not long ago about this potential threat. Let's listen to what he had to say.
Подумать, а вот про европейцев вы говорите, логика всякая возможна. Значит, ну, если, не дай бог, дойдет до каких-то ударов, то все должны понимать, что вот у России есть система СПРН, система по предупреждению, раннего предупреждения о ракетном нападении. У США есть. Больше в мире нигде такой системы развитой нет. У нас есть. В Европе развитой системы нет. Они в этом смысле более или менее беззащитны. Это первое. Второе, мощность ударов. У нас наше тактическое ядерное оружие в 3 раза мощнее, в 4, чем использованные американцами бомбы против Хиросимы и Нагасаки. В 3-4 раза. У нас по количеству их в разы больше. И на европейском континенте, и даже если американцы привезут свои из США, у нас все равно в разы больше. Но если дойдет, не дай бог, да, чего очень не хотелось, я переключусь, вот, значит, то тогда, вот вы сказали, мы сократим жертвы, но они могут возрасти до бесконечности. Это первое. А второе, конечно, эти же самые европейцы должны будут задуматься, если, значит, те, с кем мы будем обмениваться такими ударами, не будут существовать, ввяжутся и американцы в этот обмен ударами уже на уровне стратегических вооружений или нет. Я очень сомневаюсь. И европейцы тоже должны об этом подумать, это безусловно. Но...
I mean, fairly clear, fairly straightforward. He knows what he's talking about. He makes more sense than most Western leaders, to be frank. And they've been trying to avoid any escalation with Western countries. Don't forget they had a deal with Ukraine in 2022. And don't forget it was Boris Johnson, the British Prime Minister at the time, and Joe Biden who pushed Zelensky to go and escalate with Russia. If you don't believe me, go and read some of that history of that period and listen to officials who were involved in this. But they're still attacking, they're still escalating, and they are still being arrogant and more reckless to a level where they are now targeting these Russian oil tankers. What can Russia do? Firstly, we had a statement coming from the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, who asked the Americans to treat the Russians on that boat, on that oil tanker, respectfully and respect their human dignity. But another Russian official, and he has senior position to do with the security establishment in Russia, said something else. He said that we need a military retaliation, including a nuclear response after this attack and the United States seizing these oil tankers. He suggested that a nuclear strike against the US, and he also suggested that the US is now in a state of euphoria of impunity. That is a very apt description of the United States administration, now the United States as a whole, of course, led by this radical administration, euphoria of impunity following the Venezuelan leader Maduro's arrest, Russian media reported on January the 7th. We need to provide a military response, attack with torpedoes, or sink a couple of American boats. Alexei Zhuravlyov, the first deputy head of the Russian State's Duma's Defense Committee. That's his position. That's a senior position in the Russian establishment. This is nothing more than piracy, the seizure of a civilian vessel by the armed US Navy. It is essentially the same as an attack on Russian territory. We already have people declaring this as an attack on Russian sovereignty and territory. But still, you know, Britain wanted to put its name on it anyway. Since the tanker was flying our national flag, there is no doubt we must respond firmly and swiftly. Our military doctrine even envisages the use of nuclear weapons in response to such an attack, especially since, according to available information, a Russian submarine and some other military ships were located somewhere near the vessel, he said. Previously, it was reported that the US force seized the Russian-operated oil tanker MT Sofia in the Caribbean Sea, marking the second interdiction of a sanctioned vessel within hours. The ship was operating under US sanctions and had no national flag. It was intercepted in the international waters and is currently being escorted by the United States by the US Coast Guard. So they're acting tough against oil tankers, yet they fled like cowards from Yemen and Ansarullah, who were blasting them left, right, and center with missiles against America's main bullying tool, the aircraft carriers. But now they're acting like machos and heroes and cowboys against an oil tanker, albeit, of course, belonging to Russia. And that's something very severe. There were even statements from people like Alexander Dugin, the well-known philosopher of Russia, who stated that, in other words, it's going to happen at some point, because the United States is escalating its attacks. They are constantly provoking, and they are causing more and more problems. He said in a post that he had on X the following: the so-called peace deal was impossible from the very beginning, the pure waste of time. Russia is morally prepared now to radical, full-fledged war with the West. And he has his weight. Alexander Dugin is very well known, and many people listen to him and to his statements. The question remains, though, will they respond, or will there be something else? The main thing that should be concerning everyone is the actions of their own countries. That's what people in the West should be concerned about. The United States, Britain, the main concern is their own leaders' reckless, stupid moves that go against international law, any common sense, and put every citizen at risk of a very severe blow, by the way. Now, that was in relation to Russia. We have another country, and that country is called China. We've heard there were recent mobilizations happening in both China and North Korea. The Chinese have been preparing, and there were some reports that they were preparing to escort some of their oil tankers going to Venezuela with air defense systems and army boats as well. If China starts to do that, that means we have another step that the United States might try and go against. They might try and go and attack a Chinese vessel this time, or Chinese boat, or whatever it is, one of their warships. What is going to happen then? They're going to be poking two nuclear powers. Well, what they did with Russia, by the way, is more severe than China, because Russia is more capable from a nuclear perspective. It has approximately 20 times the number of nuclear warheads than China. And what people need to remember is that that submarine that was supposed to accompany or come close to that oil tanker that the United States carried out its acts of piracy on with the help of the UK, had at least 6 nuclear bombs on it. Something to think about. In case it was attacked, in case something happened. I mean, there could be some miscalculations, right? However, that is the situation on that front with Russia and potentially with China as well. Threats of escalation. Russia is fully entitled to respond at the moment. As a matter of fact, if Russia doesn't respond to this, they're actually going to be helping the United States conduct more acts of aggression in the future. Because like I said in the beginning, the United States administration is setting precedents. If the world accepts them, then be prepared. They'll be in your home next. And they'll be targeting your people and saying, well, like the Israelis, it was promised to me 10,000 years ago. By Mordon, or the evil empire, or one of the idols they worship, by someone. Because we deserve it. And you have people who are supposedly like critical sometimes in the United States, like Alex Jones and Nick Fuentes, justifying the act, saying as if, we know better than them. We know how to manage the oil resources of other countries. Typical arrogance and typical clarity of who these people work for exactly, and how they justify these blatant crimes, unnecessary crimes, unnecessary provocation, unnecessary escalation, unnecessarily putting your own people at risk. And that's what they want to hide from you. And that is the main thing that people need to focus on. Putting innocent people at risk for no reason. It's not like anyone attacked them. Anyone occupied the United States. Anyone... It's not like a legitimate resistance there. It's a sort of an aggression happening against them. You'd think if Venezuela or Russia started to attack the United States under any pretext or whatever, and the United States started to respond, I think, well, Russia started it, they didn't, But they're doing that on their own accord. No provocation, no nothing. People just minding their own business. And you'd think for a second that, okay, let's assume that the United States, or let's say things as they are, the United States is the most powerful country in the West. Let's say the United States says, I have military might, I'm very powerful, I want to control the Western Hemisphere. And then it starts diplomatic talks with multiple countries in this so-called Western Hemisphere, through dialogue, mutual communication, mutual respect, respecting the sovereignty and people of other countries and their territorial integrity and everything to do with their independence, and say, do you know what, China and Russia, this is our area. Can you just deal with the East? And they fair play, And then, I don't know, international trade and what have you. But the United States is in the South China Sea. They have bases next to China. Okinawa, they've been in Okinawa for almost a century now. Other bases in East Asia, in Europe, the biggest base in the world in the center of Germany, Ramstein, and then bases next to Russia, bases in the Middle East, in Africa. They're being expelled slowly from Africa. They're not telling you about that so much. but other parts of the world too. What is that? So that they want complete unipolarity, have monopoly all over the world, and they don't want anyone having any sort of normal trade. The level of greed is, okay, let's say some of these people, I don't know, okay, they want to make more money. How much more money do you want to make? Aren't you already like multimillionaires and billionaires? I mean, what is enough for you? They have their life secured, the life of their family and extended family, and they have the livelihoods of half of the world secured in their bank accounts and assets. What else do you want? I mean, let people live. But no, they don't want that. They don't want that, and they want constant escalation. And that escalation is, again, not just in the Western Hemisphere, of course not, or what they call the Western Hemisphere. Listen to this man over here.
Change is coming to Iran. It'll be the biggest change in the history of the Mideast to get rid of this Nazi regime. To the people of Iran, help is on the way. Change is coming to Iran. Help is on the way, and we're going to take care of this Nazi regime. Help is on the way. And God bless America and no place else. And Israel, the chosen people of God. They want to go and attack Iran. So they're not just meddling with Russia and China and all. They want to go and attack Iran too. That is a clear indication they want to attack Iran. Yesterday, more Israeli officials confirmed in the Israeli media that it's actually Donald Trump pushing Netanyahu to go and attack Lebanon. There were other reports confirming that Iran sent messages to Israel that an attack against Lebanon will be perceived as an attack against Iran, and they will participate. Because it's clear now, it's either do or die. It's game over. The United States is looking to control the world and everyone, and control people's destiny, and control everything under the sun. And they're not going about it in a diplomatic way. They're not going about it in a reasonable way. They're not going about it in a peaceful manner. They're going about it with sheer brutal force and terrorism. And again, putting their own people's lives at risk. That is something very important and very dangerous. And the Iranians, like the Russians, are realizing that. And we've been talking about the potential and the talks from Iran that Iran might actually be conducting a preemptive strike against Israel, when their senior security, one of their security councils, said that response isn't necessarily waiting for your enemy to attack you, and a continuation of the hostile rhetoric towards Iran would justify an attack, a preemptive strike, in other words, against Iran. There were unconfirmed, I must highlight that, reports coming from Iran that Iranian air defenses intercepted an Israeli drone on the western borders of Iran. Netanyahu yesterday spoke about Iran preparing, deploying, and having actions, and he said, and the Israeli media is saying, that they are preparing for a potential preemptive strike coming from Iran. The Israelis might be testing the waters before such an attack happens by sending some of their drones to either get more information about the preparations coming from the Iranian side and their level of alertness and preparedness when it comes to an attack against Israel, so that the Israeli side would have slightly more information, intel, knowledge about what's going to happen. And this was seen in Iran. Radars in many locations in the streets. Let's have a look at this video over here. So from an Iranian perspective, we're seeing very, very advanced levels of preparation on the defensive side, on the attack side. We heard more reports today that Iran now deployed the majority of its strategic missiles to be in complete readiness. One of the top figures in Iran, who is General Abdul Rahim Musawi, said the following: the United States and the Zionist entity will receive a slap every time they do not speak respectfully with these people, as in their people. The authentic Iranian people with their Iranian Islamic identity did not allow foreigners to interfere in the just and legitimate protests of professionals and merchants. That is yet another statement coming from the head of the general staff of Iran, apart from the security establishment statements that came yesterday talking about Iran's rights to carry out a preemptive strike, basically. Now, we have all of these tensions happening. We have tensions. The United States is wreaking havoc everywhere, and now they've escalated to a level with Russia. They have tensions with, of course, Venezuela. They're saying that Colombia, Nicaragua, Cuba are going to be next year, potentially, as a matter of fact. One of the American officials said that's U.S. Senator Rick Scott. This is the beginning of changes in Venezuela. Then we will fix the situation in Cuba. Everything will improve in Nicaragua. And next year we will have a new president in Colombia. That's what's happening now. That's the United States of America. We have all of these situations, all of these tensions, and there are some things that are being underreported now that you need to be aware of. Number one, 5 countries warned their citizens from traveling to Iran. There were reports coming from Israel that the Russian embassy asked every Russian citizen to evacuate from Israel. More countries reportedly warning their citizens from traveling to Israel and also to Iran. Why are they doing that? Well, they know what's happening. They know what's coming. They know that something is about to explode, and something is about to explode very soon. This was a Russian cargo ship reportedly leaving Israel that was reported and monitored online earlier on, and everyone is on high alert. It's as if they understand that something is happening and something very big is about to happen. And they're threatening Iran and they're escalating. And on top of all of that, the Saudi Emirati tensions are reaching sky-high levels in Yemen, because Yemen, you have the transitional government, or the international recognized government, Ansarullah, the Houthis, and the additional UAE-backed Southern Transitional Force or Council that was looking to establish an independent entity in the south. We've been speaking about this. Saudi Arabia now is intensifying its attacks over there in Yemen. Ansarullah, in some sort of a slight alignment with their big hostile adversary, Saudi Arabia, because they've been clashes with them, but things started to de-escalate in certain points, especially after 2023. They said that they are also willing to stop any sort of separatist movement in the south, which is kind of aligning them on that matter with Saudi Arabia, because they're seeing the UAE/Israeli act happening there in the south alongside Somaliland, where the Zionists are looking to establish a base there to control Bab el-Mandeb and that strait, so that they can counter any potential future attacks being conducted against them by Ansarullah, because even the United States with 4 aircraft carriers failed in that area. And they were expelled from the region, withdrew only after they negotiated the deal with Ansarullah. It's all over the place. The whole world now is in a state of very high danger. I mean, that's something we can say. And again, I'm not trying to be like dramatic or anything, but all of these are very alarming signs that more escalation about to happen. And all of this is purely due to 2 countries, primarily. Anyone associated with them too. The United States and Israel. And then, of course, a couple of other European countries like Britain, like Germany, but primarily the United States and Israel. They're doing all of these problems all across the world, even in Latin America, simultaneously with the talks of Donald Trump and these senators about these changes. The Israeli foreign minister was saying, we are looking to create a new era in 2026 in Latin America and create a less hostile environment, because they were anti-Israeli. If you bring a rock, if you go and get a rock, if you're a rock climber or you like terrain, grab a rock and put that rock in front of your screen and show it the Israeli crimes for just 2 or 3 minutes in the past couple of years in Gaza, and tell me that that rock will not be anti-Israeli. Let alone a human, as in let alone a man with a head and or a woman or something, you know, alive, breathing with a soul and a moral conscience, a level of integrity, a pair of eyes. But that's proving how intertwined they are. It's the same thing. The United States administration, Israel, are the exact same thing. And if you want proof, we've been talking about the protests that Israel was doing, was the Jewish Orthodox were having in Israel against the IDF, anti-IDF, anti-establishment protests, and how they were being run over. Look at what ICE was doing today against the Americans who were protesting against their presence in Minneapolis. Let's have a look. I'm going to show you a couple of videos, and I'm going to warn the viewers, some of the videos are not very pleasant. Let's have a look. It started with this video over here. Look.
Bob, I want to jump in here. I want to ask you where you're at right now. And we're seeing the images on the screen. There's that flag you were talking about being burned here. What kind of things are they shouting? The crowd that's out there. I know they're obviously not happy ICE is there. They've been talking about that. What are they saying? You know, what's the energy like where you are right now?
So that's one reason why I'm not getting too close, so I can hear all of you, because it is loud out here. It's profanity. There's a lot of profanities against ICE.
Bob, I want to jump.
Okay, so let me clarify. These are Americans burning the American flag, okay? And if you're concerned, these are white Americans burning the American flag. Okay, some people start saying immigrants and it's immigrant. Why? Look at the brutality that took place today. Look at that.
Let go! Let go! Whoa! Kill someone else! Go for it! Kill someone else!
So severe brutality coming from ICE against the people to a level where they shot and killed an innocent woman simply because she was protesting against their presence. And I'm going to share this video with you because Donald Trump protected the man who killed her under the excuse that he was protecting himself. Let's look at the video and analyze. So in case, I mean, let me just kind of explain clearly, in case you're not really seeing properly, this is the woman over here, right? This is the woman. She's in that car. And she's telling them, get out of here. And these are the ICE agents, those who are concerned about killing and expelling immigrants. Let me make it a full view.
No! No!
Now look what's going to happen now over here, okay? She's turning, look at her wheel. She's turning, she's just trying to run away from them. This man, this ICE guy.
No! Get the fuck out of our neighborhood! Yeah, it's a fucking crime! We fucking know it! We're here! Yeah, like what the absolute fuck, man? What the absolute fuck? Do you have a conscience? Do you have a conscience? Do you have a conscience? This is the time, man. This is the time to have a conscience. This is not okay. This is not okay. Get a fucking conscience.
Did you look at me? Tell me you're doing the right thing. Get the fuck out of here, bro. You didn't fire any weapons. Fucking your people did that.
In the head. In the head.
I didn't do anything.
And she drove into the pole.
Murderer. You look at me. You can't even.
Watch out, man. Watch out.
Why don't you look at me? I thought you could do it. You owe yourself.
You okay, mommy?
I mean, very disturbing scenes. Firstly, the woman who was there was simply telling the ICE guy, what are you doing here, and get out of our neighborhood? Because they were supposedly coming to, firstly, against the will of the state of Minneapolis and unwelcomed by the people and by the governor. And I will tell you what the governor said afterwards. They go there to catch immigrants. Okay. Again, you know, following this rhetoric, as if these are the people causing the problems, when the head of state and when your federal government is leading you to oblivion, to any of the idiots, by the way, who still follow this stupid xenophobic rhetoric. She, that woman who lives there, confronts them, says that leave, you need to leave, get out of our neighborhood. When they come to her, she tries to leave in the car. This man comes, tries to get her out and tell her that she's arrested. Another guy immediately pulls his gun before she even drives away. He wants to kill her. Did you get it? Bang. He starts the shots.
and she gets killed. She's left there for 15 minutes. That's why he went and called 911 afterwards. 911 come much later on. In the meantime, according to eyewitnesses, a doctor comes with medical experience, says, I have first aid experience. You know, I can treat the woman in case she could have survived, you know, unless the 2 shots were in her head. I don't know, because sometimes you can even survive a bullet to your head. They didn't allow him to go in, and they were bullying everyone around them. And that is America, as in that is the federal government of the United States of America. That happened. What does the president have to say? What does the American... And that's why you saw burning flags and all of that afterwards. Americans burning American flags because they realize what their country is actually about. Look at what Donald Trump had to say. I just viewed the video clip which took place in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It is a horrible thing to watch. The woman screaming was obviously a professional agitator, not them. Masked thugs coming with guns to a peaceful neighborhood, not them. She was the agitator for telling them, get out of my neighborhood. And the woman driving the car was very disorderly. Not them. They were not disorderly, wreaking havoc, obstructing people, beating them, pepper spraying them, and killing them. Obstructing and resisting, who then violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer. You big liar. She wasn't even intending to run over him. She didn't run over him, unless it was who seems to have shot her in self-defense. Based on the attached clip, it is hard to believe he is alive. What a pathetic liar. You saw the video. But now recovering in the hospital. Hospital. He was walking very fast after. Nothing was wrong with him. And he's saying he went to hospital. What a compulsive liar. If they lie blatantly with video evidence against Americans who get killed by the federal government, and it's thugs and criminals, what else do they lie about? You might think, what else is there? The video is clear as daylight. The situation is being studied in its entirety, but the reason these incidents happen is because the radical left is threatening. Again, resorting to identity politics and left and right. Assaulting and targeting our law enforcement officers and ICE agents on a daily basis, who are just trying to do their job to make America safe. But he is definitely making America safe, right? The president himself, by going and attacking Russian oil tankers. Now he's definitely making America safe. We need to stand by and protect our law enforcement officers from this radical left movement of violence and hate. Anyone who buys this, including from these so-called alt media figures online, is complicit in these crimes that the American administration is conducting, if not agents for the federal government of the United States. Anyone justifying these attacks against Venezuela, anyone justifying these attacks of the ICE thugs inside of the United States of America. That's the United States for you. Okay, so what did the Minnesota governor had to say? Let's listen to a clip that was released for his speech after the incident.
This morning, we learned that an ICE officer shot and killed someone in Minneapolis. My deepest condolences to the family, to the loved ones who had to learn about this tragic event on national television. We have been warning for weeks that the Trump administration's dangerous, sensationalized operations are a threat to our public safety, that someone was going to get hurt. Just yesterday, I said exactly that. What we're seeing is the consequences of governance designed to generate fear, headlines, and conflict. It's governing by reality TV. And today that recklessness cost someone their life. I've reached out to Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, and I'm waiting to hear back. Let me be clear, Donald Trump and his administration may not care much about Minnesota. That's been pretty evident, but we love this state. We won't let them tear us apart. We'll not turn against each other. To Minnesotans, I say this: I feel your anger. I'm angry. They want a show. We can't give it to them. We cannot. If you protest and express your First Amendment rights, please do so peacefully, as you always do. We can't give them what they want. The hearts and minds of the people in this state are on our side. To Americans, I ask you this: please stand with Minneapolis. To Minnesotans, know that our administration is going to stop at nothing to seek accountability and justice. The State Bureau of Criminal Apprehension are working on the investigation. We have activated the State Emergency Operations Center. State Patrol and Minnesota National Guard leadership is connected with the Minneapolis Police Department, the St. Paul Police Department, Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, the DNR, and Minnesota's Homeland Security and Emergency Management. We have activated dozens of members of the State Patrol's mobile response team. And from here on, I have a very simple message. We do not need any further help from the federal government. To Donald Trump and Kristi Noem, you've done enough. There's nothing more important than Minnesotan safety. I've issued a warning order to prepare the Minnesota National Guard. We have soldiers in training and prepared to be deployed if necessary. I remind you, a warning order is a heads up for folks. And these National Guard troops are our National Guard troops. They're teachers in your community, they're business owners, they're construction professionals. They are Minnesotans. Minnesota will not allow our community to be used as a prop in a national political fight. We will not take the bait. We will continue to update you, Minnesota, as we get more information. Now I'd like to turn it over to Commissioner Bob Jacobson of the Minnesota Department of Public Safety.
They're basically saying that they're going to activate their National Guard to take place of the federal forces that are imposing themselves against the will of the people of Minnesota. And they don't want them there. Some people, though, they were more clear in their message, including Mayor Jacob Frey. Listen to what he had to say.
And I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the fuck out of Minneapolis. And I have a message.
That was a little bit clearer than the message we heard before. Get out of Minneapolis. And that was the full statement that he made in relation to this.
There's little I can say, again, that'll make this situation better, but I do have a message for our community, for our city, and I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the fuck out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite. People are being hurt. Families are being ripped apart. Long-term Minneapolis residents that have contributed so greatly to our city, to our culture, to our economy are being terrorized, and now somebody is dead. There's little I can say, again, that'll...
So Donald Trump is having these provocations all across of the United States, and Minneapolis is only one of them. He has problems with, well, every Democrat and every Republican who opposes him. Anyone who shows an ounce of criticism or resistance against his outrageous and obnoxious hostile policies against Americans, first and foremost, is labeled as, like, you know, a demon, a radical, an insane individual. That's what's happening internally, and it will potentially lead in the United States of America to states asking to be independent. Just be independent from this way too corrupt of a federal government. The United States establishment, I mean, in the past 2 years, it all started with Gaza, didn't it? Gaza, no wonder we call Gaza the revealer. It revealed Israel to the world. It revealed the Western establishment supporting Israel in front of their own people. That's why, by the way, many people who protest and show solidarity with the Palestinian people, in many cases, by the way, in effect, they're protesting against their own governments, not just against Israel, because they realized, they've come to a realization that, hold on a second, the problem begins here. So Donald Trump is continuing that act and these actions and these policies that are further exposing the American administration, not only to Americans, but to the whole world. And what is the message that they are sending Americans when they do that internally? When they go and attack Russian oil tankers, the average American will tell you, well, you're killing us. No wonder they're going to target them. I'm going to be on the Russian side then. It's very simple. So he's not doing himself a favor. If you want to escalate any leader with an ounce of brain, if they want to escalate against any other country, rightfully so or not rightfully so, what they need to make sure of, although, by the way, that goes against traditional and very ancient philosophies to do with power and governance. The best way to achieve your goals is without firing a bullet. The best way to defeat your enemy is without an invasion. But we have a militaristic oligarchy. We have a war machine, a military-industrial complex. Putting that aside, if you want to invade, rightfully or not rightfully so, or attack another country, again, rightfully or not rightfully so, based on any sort of claims you have, you would, if you don't have any common sense from those elements that I spoke to you about, you would want to ensure that you have national harmony, national unity, people surrounding their leadership and backing them fully, not from one side of the political map, but from all sides of the political map. There needs to be a consensus amongst the people that we are indeed facing an external threat, again, whether you're brainwashing them or not, and that's why you need to support us. Yet, when he is sending his federal agents to terrorize Americans, average Americans, literally, everywhere across the United States, in so many places, the message of the average American, or that the average American gets, is, well, he is being hostile to me. So how can I support my government against Russia or China? That's why they're working hard with some of these people online who are advocating for, attacking Venezuela and, this war against immigration. You saw how many, you saw the immigrant he killed today. She was an American woman, white American woman, who just said, get out of my neighborhood, blasted her in the head. And he'll get away with it because he has the backing of the American president, who called the woman who was killed an agitator. Israelism, the Israelization. That was it for this live stream, everyone. I'll open the space up. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you have any sort of questions or comments, I'm happy to kind of address them quickly with the brief time that we have. Michael McIntyre, thank you so much for your super, much appreciated. If anyone has any questions, if you wouldn't mind highlighting them just so we can address them quickly. And again, thank you so much for tuning in for another live stream. Let me go up in the chat quickly, see if we have anything. USA Civil War, well, it looks like it. It looks like there might be something happening here, because there are many armed groups in the United States apart from the federal government. So if in case something like goes too far, but there are other options, and those other options are to, before it reaches a stage of full-blown civil war, official requests, that's it, referendums, official requests from people in multiple states in the United States to have independence, simple, and completely divorce the federal government, this corrupt federal government. And again, the irony is Donald Trump is saying that he wants to go in and protect protesters in Iran when he's killing innocent civilians in the United States of America, as in directly shooting them. We're not still counting the people who are dying as a direct result of the policies of the federal government. That's another thing here. And it's very important, by the way. Marvin, you familiar with the fact that Kissinger, I believe, predicted the fall of Israel? Do you recall what year that was? I heard something along those lines. I'm not sure if I'm familiar with the statement itself, but it wasn't only Kissinger, by the way. There was a CIA file that was leaked in the early 2010s that related to the end of Israel, because they know, they have statistics, they know the risks here and there. Mainstream media is, of course, to control you and fool you, not to portray reality. But with the CIA has vast, data, huge data, and they know statistics, information, facts, files. Zobocasto, Mahmoud, there were social media posts claiming checkpoints at the West Bank were unmanned yesterday. Do you know anything about this? I haven't necessarily been able to kind of verify claims to do with unmanned checkpoints in the West Bank. I don't think Israel would. As a matter of fact, there were more arrests in the West Bank in the past couple of days in campaigns of terror for the Israeli terror forces. What did happen in the West Bank, to be more specific, in the Jordan Valley area, is that Israel was exploding huge areas to prepare for the building of what? Not a bridge, a wall. Have a look at this. So they were bombing these areas in the Jordan Valley River, as in this is just next to the borders with Jordan. According to Israel, it was both to remove mines and prepare the ground for another wall. You know the story of the walls in occupied Palestine. They have walls between families and neighbors. In the West Bank, they built walls in neighborhoods. So imagine you're sitting there and you have a neighbor, and maybe, I don't know, your sister or whatever it is living next to you. Israel goes and builds a wall in the middle. Now they want to build a wall with Jordan to prevent infiltration. More escalation, more things, and more what? More worry. More worry. A country that they've had a peace treaty with for so long, a country that, by the way, polices the eastern side of the West Bank very heavily, as in you need to be scanned even if you have a land on the borders with occupied Palestine from the Jordan area. You're scanned by the Jordanian authorities to go in your land. That's how much they're coordinated. And the attacks that came from Jordanians who killed Israeli security officials in the past couple of years during the genocide, they came through the checkpoints. They didn't come from infiltration. There might have been one infiltration, perhaps. But that shows you that they are very, very paranoid lately. But they are still in their locations in the West Bank and in their apartheid regime. Rayhano Yolola, what is the way forward for the world and the United States? Well, there's an ideal way forward, and there is a way forward based on what is actually happening on the ground. The ideal way forward is to have a proper international law that is enforceable with every single country, regardless of the level of its power and might and reach and all of these things. There also needs to be more equality and diversity within the United Nations, should the United Nations continue to exist, by the way. There needs to be proper respect to international law. There needs to be equal rights all across the board. There should be no supremacy for one people over another anywhere across the world. There should be solid peace treaties and economic treaties and border treaties and security treaties between countries. There should be a way forward where using force isn't the way to achieve either political or financial means. As human beings, we have the capacity to do that. It's not that we don't, it's just that some elements choose not to because they make profit out of it and they happen to run the show, which leads us to reality. And that reality is we have people with vast influence and control over banking systems, financial systems, countries, politicians, corporations, media, energy, a pharma cartel, you name it. And they implement policies that are against the interests of the people, all of the people, all across the world, regardless of how they portray their acts or motives. And that is leading to escalated recklessness, heaps of arrogance and hostilities, and actions that stem from a sense of total control and power. It's like they're drunk with power. That will inevitably lead to more conflict, which is potentially what they want. Maybe not to a level where an all-out destruction will happen, but again, they can't control that because they can't control how the countries they target respond. And the countries that they target, primarily China and Russia, if we want to talk about it globally, they might be, well, it's not that they might be, they are way more reasonable, rational, diplomatic than the Western establishments. But when it comes to either stepping on their toes or getting into their territory, you don't know how they might respond. And at that time, the United States will have to make a decision. Either we bite the bullet, take it, shut up, and understand that we've been put in our place by emerging global powers and the end of total American dominance and the new world order that was imposed on everyone following World War I and II, that were heavily manipulated and still are, by the way, so you need to reread your history if you haven't. Ended for good, and they just need to be pleased with what they have. And what they have is a lot, by the way. What they have is a lot. What the United States as a country has is a lot, by the way. It's a very, very big country. And they have a lot of money, a lot of power. They have, should there be correct policies, a lot for the American people to thrive for good, by the way, for the rest of their lives. Do you want proof? Donald Trump reportedly just approved 1.5 trillion in defense budget. Do you know what $1.5 trillion is? Not like 1.5 million, not like 1.5 billion, 1.5 trillion. That means he can feed every American and every poor person on earth. But if you don't care about the rest of the earth, every American. Yet he chooses deliberately to go and spend it on defense, which is in essence attack, war. Because that's how they run the establishment. War economy, militaristic oligarchy, wars and wars and wars and destruction. And judging by how that path is going, it's not looking very well for any of us. Because they are escalating further and further, leading to more destabilization, leading to more risks, and leading to more wars. And the first step in opposing that is, well, firstly, being aware of it, actually, because many people aren't aware, to be frank. And then opposing it, you know, having at least a vocal objection, to say the least. Wavy McFly, Salam Mahmoud, can you please talk about the bots and trolls that Israel and the US have that are on social media that have people believing that people are behind certain things? Yeah, I think that's a very important subject, actually, that I constantly, try and mention during my work, either coverage, you know, on main events that people need to be aware of and the reality behind them. But the propaganda machine of Israel and the American establishment extends beyond corporate media and mainstream media. It's already in social media. I mean, as a matter of fact, who established social media? For their own reasons. And yes, it has flipped against them to a certain extent, but who established social media? There are many reasons to believe that the DARPA project, if you haven't heard about the DARPA project, it's a project of the federal government, very secretive project that is in charge of many things that happened that were very inhumane across history. Hopefully, I'll talk more about it in some future episodes. They want to control the narrative, but the thing is, it flipped against them. But because it flipped and people started to actually voice their actual concerns and their opinions, they wanted to monitor it. Therefore, they started to put in filtration processes in people who are allied with them, who openly confirm that they restrict free speech on social media, like the Facebook official, for example, the other day, who confirmed that they restrict free speech. And she said that they ban speech against anti-Semitism, for example, claims that they control the media. That was like amazing. She just confirmed that they control and ban, and go figure. Apart from that, they have their trolls. Israel sells automated systems. There are Israeli companies that sell systems with, for example, 30, 40, 50,000 people who look legit, who have a history on Facebook or X or whatever, and who start to comment automatically. You say the project and they'll start commenting, the bots. Then we have now the main thing is algorithm manipulation. Algorithm, a very interesting word. It's named after Al-Khwarizmi, actually, who was a great Muslim scholar, if you didn't know. Algorithm, Al-Khwarizmi. And now they want to control the algorithm so that they manipulate you through the algorithm. there are, of course, financial interests behind that, and there are some claims that social media will support both sides of the story so long as they're making money in ads. There's an argument there, but there's undoubtedly another layer to do with control. For example, you need to be careful of what you talk about, how you depict things, how far you go. There are things that can be understandable, for example, restricting hate speech or calls for violence against innocent people or what have you. But again, we have seen that it's very tilted towards certain people against other people. One example of that is, well, you have seen the past 2 years with the genocide. But before that, if you recall, when the Russian-Ukrainian war began, what did Facebook do? Facebook lifted hate speech off anything that relates to Russia and the Russian people. As in every Russian person. Russophobia was spreading all across, and xenophobia against every Russian person. Why? Because Western establishments, you know, they wanted to have a narrative, artificially generated sympathy, raise the Ukrainian flag everywhere, show sympathy with the Ukrainian people. They don't care about any Ukrainian person. If they cared about the Ukrainian people, they would have supported Zelensky getting a deal with Putin from the beginning to avoid the loss of one Ukrainian life. Not killing 1 million Ukrainians. So that's what's happening in social media. And that's something that everyone needs to be aware of. Because social media doesn't necessarily also represent the full picture. There's still a level of manipulation. Ray Linman, what would you suggest we do if Americans have the bare minimum to travel out of the US? Should we permanently stay at the country of choice while we wait for safety? Oh, that's a very interesting question. And I think, I mean, I would probably provide very limited information in terms of advice. And of course, I would encourage everyone to do their due diligence. But if I have to think on top of my head, I would say view every place and the risk elements with it. For example, if there were to be a war and certain bases in the United States or locations would be attacked, do you live in a place that is strategic or that would be prone to a strategic attack? A main federal government, a main command and control government, a very strategic military base, a base that is not necessarily known for everyone, but people know, because there are some locations that are more secretive than others that other countries might be aware of. All of these things combined. And try and be in lesser risky locations. There are some, well, again, indicators as to the level of risk that every place has. And it's important to take them into consideration. And of course, you would need to also have your own research. Exactly where does your, for example, state stand exactly? What is its position? What are the governor's positions? All of this information. It's actually vital, but it's very important because everyone would think also, even if you are in any other country, a European country or any other country, for example, that is participating, for example, in this US piracy, where do you think the likelihood lies in an attack happening, and where and when, potentially? And at what level? And where are you based? Are you very close to a very strategic location? Or are you very far from it? And we're being very, I mean, optimistic with these assumptions, by the way, because there are enough weapons to destroy everything. I mean, there are enough nuclear warheads to destroy Earth multiple times, and the moon, perhaps. But assuming tactical weapons were used with limited, effect, some people would have a chance to survive. Diane Sylvian, did you hear 7 soldiers injured when Maduro was arrested? Trump said 0 Americans hurt. I predict there will be come out. I predict more will come out about what really happened. Do you agree? I mean, of course, the American administration wouldn't admit. How many people did they admit were killed in Iraq? 5,000. How many actually died? 32,000 by 2006, by the way, according to the Iraqi resistance sources at the time. So I'm sure they're going to hide something. But in Venezuela, there was more staging than we expect. I mean, the whole thing, the fact that hardly any shots were fired, some videos and what have you. And again, some things could be manipulated too. Let's not forget that we live in an age of AI. I mean, AI can mimic you and me talking with our voice in a close-up, let alone a helicopter that is 1 or 2 or 3 kilometers away. That's fairly easy. You can do it if you like use something. So I wouldn't be surprised if something actually did happen. It would be surprising that there wouldn't be any sort of, counter action happening from the Venezuelan side. I really didn't buy the story from the beginning as it was, but hey, Maduro was with them, so there's no denying that. However, where was it this event that they portrayed it as? I'm not sure. Again, Trump is lying blatantly in front of the whole world about an American woman who was shot by an ICE officer and killed, saying she was the agitator and she was the provocator and she's the radical left. Universal Energy, Putin too soft, time for another leader. I think, again, that goes with similar things that I spoke about before. Russian leaders and Chinese leaders are rational players. They're more rational than almost any Western leader. They don't want World War III. They don't want nuclear war. They don't want, but they are constantly being attacked, constant hostility against them, constant narrative against them. Because why? Because the United States and the elite controlling the show want to subjugate them to their financial systems, to their control. They want their data, they want their precious minerals, they want their oil, they want their gas. If the United States went to Venezuela for oil, why wouldn't they want Russia for gas and oil? There's an ongoing war now over the natural resources required for new tech, batteries. China discovered the majority of it. And as a matter of fact, just recently opened markets for Western countries. Perhaps as a bait, maybe. Look what we can give you. So it's not about too soft or, not too soft. Listen, he could have ended everything in Ukraine from the first week. He didn't. They have a certain tactic where they don't want to burn all of the cards. They don't want to lead the world to World War III more than Trump does or risks getting us to. So probably there were certain instances where they could have had maybe more responses. But again, I'm not one to judge that because, well, they would have their own strategy and what they do. What's for sure is that the hostility level and the crime level and the lawlessness level is incomparable to the Western establishment in general. But should he let the United States get away with what they've done to that oil tanker? that could perhaps be a mistake. That could be a mistake. Because, again, the United States is trying to set precedents here and trying to show or test the boundaries, test the waters. Where are things going? So if we had an oil tanker today, maybe we'll try and hold, I don't know, one of their warships. Who knows? Ask Zelensky to attack further or give him equation-breaking weapons. And that's why we've had these statements coming from security officials that they need to sink some US ships as a response and potentially use nukes and torpedoes. So they're thinking along those lines. TikTok viral, Venezuela allowing the US fleet to camp, and thank you for your super, by the way, both of you. Venezuela allowing the US fleet to camp in front of their country for 2 months without any resistance is utter cowardice. The Houthis didn't allow them to settle in their coast, let alone the Red Sea. This is why they lost. I think that is so on point, absolutely. And that's what is surprising to me in this whole thing. It's like you have a country threatening you outright. Aren't you on high alert, or was there treason from within? What happened there? And like you said, Houthis, Ansarullah, they were. Another argument is Houthis could have been way more equipped than them, even with their limited resources. Hypersonic missiles, more advanced air defense systems. I mean, to be fair, Venezuela, they were showing off SAM 7s. SAM 7s. Well, even if they did use them, they would have taken down a couple of American helicopters, by the way. But we saw nothing. There was just one video, one guy shooting something. It was just bizarre, to be honest with you. Is it a game? Is it a theater? Is it a stage? What is it? A lot of things don't make sense to me. Especially the lack of response when a country that has been threatening you for so long was next to your door, like you said. Yeah, it is absurd. But it's definitely a very important question that we still really don't have the answer to. Sayyid Ali, salam, Mahmoud, salam. Did you hear about Greenland having untapped minerals and lithium and cobalt? Do you think the US will invade, and how will Denmark respond? I think we have had, and I'll try and share some of the information with you here. I kept some information that relates to Denmark. I think we have a situation here where, of course, the United States is playing a game that is very dangerous, and they're not being secretive about their plans. Marco Zayo Narco Rubio, who ironically is a son of immigrants from Cuba, by the way, and look at him now. There are some people like that in other European countries like Britain. Came on boats and then they start flexing muscles against people who are like them, coming from other countries. He said that basically almost all options are on the table. But there's a big problem. Denmark is NATO. Greenland belongs to the Kingdom of Denmark. There was a joint statement released. Here it goes. Let me share that with you. By European leaders. Macron of France, Merz of Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, United Kingdom, and Denmark. Arctic security remains key priority for the people of Europe and is critical for international and transatlantic security. NATO has made clear the Arctic region is a priority, and European allies are stepping up. We and many other allies have increased our presence, activities, and investments to keep the Arctic safe and to deter adversaries. The Kingdom of Denmark, including Greenland, is part of NATO. Security in the Arctic must therefore be achieved collectively in conjunction with NATO allies, including the United States, by upholding the principles of the UN Charter, including sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the inviolability of borders. These are universal principles, and we will not stop defending them. The United States is an essential partner in this endeavor as a NATO ally and through the defense agreement between the Kingdom of Denmark and the United States of 1951. Greenland belongs to its people. It is for Denmark and Greenland and them only to decide on matters concerning Denmark and Greenland. So they are having a very clear message. And also there's something interesting happening in the United States. We had a very interesting statement coming from Ted Lieu in America in relation to this, and other statements that I wanted to share with you. Listen to this.
I served on active duty in the military for 4 years and then additional 21 years in the reserves. I was a JAG. There is absolutely no legal justification whatsoever to use military force against a NATO ally, against Greenland. And if any military member, including the generals on down to enlisted members, if any of them participate in the use of military force against Greenland without congressional authorization, they are following illegal orders. That's simply a fact.
That is one strong statement. They will be following illegal orders. So therefore we have people from within the administration, from within the establishment, the government in the United States saying that, well, basically encouraging people to refuse order, which I find not really, you know, if they were honest about people and serving and orders, then you would extend that to everything else. You would extend that to Venezuela. You would extend that to the United States complicity in the genocide. You would extend that to all other countries. But they're more worried about Greenland. And they're in effect calling for people to refuse to serve. There was one other statement that came from a previous French official who was slightly more blunt. Let's have a listen.
La fin de l'OTAN. Bah, c'est la fin de l'OTAN, oui, par définition. Alors, nous ne ferons pas la guerre aux États-Unis parce qu'on n'a pas les moyens de faire la guerre aux États-Unis. Comme un enfant face à un parent toxique, bah, on est pris par surprise. Ça, c'est clair. En revanche, ils voulaient le Groenland, bah, on les met dehors de Ramstein, de Naples. Vous rentrez chez vous, vous n'avez plus un bâton. Qui les mettra dehors? Bah, nous. Vous croyez ça? Bah, vous croyez que les Italiens vont dire, allez, vous partez les bases d'Aviano, etc. Si l'OTAN s'arrête et que Trump nous parle comme ça, il est temps de parler aux avocats et de parler divorce. Je veux dire, faut qu'on arrête là. Alain Bouer, la fin de l'OTAN. Bah, c'est la fin de l'OTAN. Oui.
So, that man, he was a retired French general, Michel Yakovlev. If the NATO collapses due to the American actions inside or with NATO members like the Kingdom of Denmark and Greenland, then we would have no options but to expel all of the American bases or completely get rid of the American bases and expel the American forces from Europe, including from the Ramstein bases and their bases they have in Italy and other countries too. Divorce, in essence, and maybe that would just be the end of it. That would just be the end of NATO, because it really literally went against everything it stood up for. There was this order post-World War II. Marshall Plan, saving and recovering in Europe and financially supporting. But in essence, what we had was the European countries being literally subjugated to the United States of America rather than having an independent policy, at least international policy, foreign policy, but policies from then. They had a level of course, independence internally, but it wasn't really enough. And NATO was nothing more than a bat or an axe to try and bash Russia with and constantly expand eastwards, even after the collapse of the Soviet Union. So the Cold War ended, the hostilities ended, Russia opened its markets for capital investments in Western companies and what have you. Why did you continue to expand eastwards? When the Clinton administration promised them at the time in the early 90s, we're not going to expand eastwards and NATO is not against you. And there were, Russia even proposed being part of the NATO at one point, by the way. But they didn't want that because they wanted to continue the tensions and wanted to continue the lifeline for the military-industrial complex and this war economy of the United States and continue the hostility and tensions because they make money out of it. That is one of the biggest problems. And we'll wrap it up here, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in for another live stream. Thank you so much for everyone who participated in the chat. I hope I gave you some beneficial information today. Michael, Alan, Universe 6218, thank you very much for your super thanks. I'll hopefully be with you with other videos and live streams in the coming days too. In the meantime, everyone, stay blessed, take care, and I'll see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone. Salam.